You'd think that giving your parents over 50 grand in a year would earn you a seat at the family table. Maybe not a throne, but at least a chair. Apparently I was wrong. My name's Ethan. I'm the eldest, the dependable one. The guy who picks up the phone at midnight when Dad's heartburn suddenly sounds like a financial crisis. And for a while, I genuinely believed that being the good son was enough. Every Friday, like clockwork, I transferred $1,000 into my parents' joint account. Rent be damned. I convinced myself it was love, or duty, maybe both. The world's falling apart. Don't worry, Dad, Ethan's got it. Can't cover the electric bill. Ethan will figure it out. Meanwhile, Jacob, my younger brother, was out there living in ultra HD designer suits, spa weekends, champagne brunches. He didn't need to help Mum and Dad. Why? Because he married Claire. Claire, the walking bank vault with legs. Rich, stylish, and completely unbothered. Jacob didn't just marry up, he catapulted himself into a lifestyle none of us grew up with. And suddenly my parents acted like he built Rome in a weekend. I was invisible, unless the bills came due. I remember the first time Mum called crying. It was 2:14 a.m. I still had her voicemail saved for a while, Ethan. Your father's job is gone. We're drowning, sweetheart. The mortgage, the credit cards, everything. We might lose the house. My chest tightened as I listened, alone in my tiny studio apartment with peeling paint and a half-dead plant. I barely had enough for rent. My student loans were still breathing down my neck like a jealous ex. But I told her, don't worry, Mum. I've got you. That week, the first $1,000 vanished. And so it began. The following weeks were filled with carefully worded requests, never demands. Just subtle little guilt trips. Things are tight this month. We're behind on water again. Just a little help, honey. We'll pay you back. But they never did. I stopped eating out, brewed coffee at home, sold my gaming console. Jacob, on the other hand, was tagged on Instagram sipping rose on a yacht. I wish I could say I started getting suspicious then. But no. I thought maybe he paid for it. Maybe she did. It didn't matter. I was still the son who sent money, still waiting for the day my parents would say, "We're proud of you." Spoiler alert, that day never came. There's a special kind of sting that comes when you realize you've been played not by strangers or scammers, but by the people who raised you. It happened on a Thursday. I was on my lunch break at work, standing in line for a tuna sandwich I couldn't really afford, when I opened Instagram. I wasn't looking for anything, just killing time. And then, like a slap to the soul, there it was. Jacob, standing on a yacht, the size of my entire apartment complex. Arm wrapped around Mum, both of them grinning like life was a champagne commercial. Dad was there too, lifting a glass of what I assumed wasn't store brand ginger ale. They looked radiant. Relaxed, not a single trace of the desperate voices I'd heard the week before, voices begging for help to afford medicine. I stared at the photo until my phone screen dimmed. Just 2 days earlier, Mum had messaged me saying they couldn't afford her prescription refill, $300. Just until next week, she said. Your father and I have been feeling awful lately. Right. Sea breeze and sunburn must really take it out of you. Still, I didn't transfer the money. Not immediately. Instead, I picked up my car keys. I wasn't ready to accuse anyone, not yet. But something didn't sit right anymore, and I needed confirmation. I didn't go to my parents' house. I went next door. Mrs. Thompson, their longtime neighbour, was pruning her hydrangeas when I pulled up. She looked surprised to see me. "Ethan, aren't your parents back today?" I paused. "Back?" She blinked. They were in Miami all week. Jacob and his wife took them. Some fancy trip. They asked me to water the plants while they were gone. I managed a polite nod, even as something inside me snapped like a rubber band. Back home, I didn't cry, didn't yell. I sat in my apartment and stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the fridge. I had been paying their bills, skipping meals, sending every spare cent I had while they were clinking glasses on deck with Jacob and Claire. And now they were lying to me for more. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mum. "Sweetheart, could you send a bit more? We're still not feeling well. Just $300. Then we'll come visit you next week." I smiled. "Just not the nice kind." "Sure, Mum," I replied. "I'll take care of it." But instead of sending the money, I started planning my visit. This time, I wouldn't call ahead. I pulled into their driveway just after noon the next day. The weather was perfect, too perfect, like the universe was mocking me with clear skies and a gentle breeze while I was about to set fire to what remained of my patience. From the outside, the house looked the same as always: white shutters, a well-kept lawn, the flag swaying gently on the porch. But I'd seen the photos. I knew the truth. The suitcases I was sure I'd find inside wouldn't lie, and neither would I. I rang the bell. My dad opened the door, his expression shifting quickly from surprise to something less defined: discomfort, maybe. Guilt, if he still had some. "Ethan," he said, stepping aside. "We didn't know you were coming. I figured a surprise visit might be nice," I replied, walking in without waiting for permission. "You've been feeling sick, right?" Thought I'd bring some vitamins. And questions. The living room was spotless. Too spotless. The kind of clean you only get when you've just come back from vacation. On the dining table were 2 suitcases half unpacked. A wide-brimmed hat I recognized from Claire's Instagram lay lazily on a chair. My mum walked in from the kitchen, drying her hands with a dish towel. Her smile faltered the second she saw me. "Ethan, honey, you should have called. We would have." I cut her off. "How was Miami?" A pause. A flicker of panic. What do you mean?" I turned my phone around and showed her the Instagram post. "You know what I mean?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Behind me, Dad's breathing got heavier. "You told me you were too sick to come to dinner, asked for money for medicine, and here you are posing on a yacht." My mum tried again, her voice shaky. "It wasn't planned. Jacob invited us last minute. We didn't want to upset you. You didn't want to upset me?" I repeated, my voice rising now. "You've taken over $50,000 from me in a year. I've skipped meals, cancelled trips, sold my laptop just to keep up. And you're drinking champagne on a boat?" Dad stepped forward, his arms crossed. "Watch your tone, Ethan." I turned to face him, rage boiling under my skin. "No," I said flatly. "You watch your tone. You don't get to pull the father card after lying to me for months. You don't get to lecture me after turning me into your personal ATM. "Ethan," my mother started, "you're overreacting. It was just one trip." "One trip?" I laughed, dry and bitter. "You lied to me, over and over. Asked me for money to keep the lights on while you were cruising through Biscayne Bay with Jacob and Claire. How many times have you done this?" They didn't answer. Silence said more than words could. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. "What are you doing?" Mom asked, her voice almost frantic. I didn't respond, I just tapped. Once, twice. A message popped up, recurring transfer cancelled. "I'm done," I said. "No more money, no more lies. Ask Jacob. He seems to be doing just fine." "Ethan," my dad growled, "you're making a huge mistake." "No. I made the mistake of thinking being a good son meant bankrupting myself for people who only value me when I'm sending money." "We're your parents," Mum said, stepping forward. "Family is supposed to support each other." "Support," I repeated, "not exploit." I turned and walked toward the door, my hands shaking not from fear, but release. Years of resentment were finally peeling off like dead skin. But as I opened the door, A voice rang out behind me. "You'll regret this, Ethan." I turned slowly, met my father's cold stare with my own. "No," I said, "you will." I left without slamming the door, but the silence I left behind might as well have been an earthquake. Back at my apartment, Liam was waiting. He took one look at my face and opened his arms. I didn't cry, I'd already done that 100 times in silence, but I leaned into him and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. "They lied to me, Liam, for over a year, and I kept helping them because I thought that's what family meant." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, gently, "And now?" "Now," I said, "they can learn what it's like to survive without my paycheck." The words felt strange at first, but by the time I said them, I knew I meant every syllable. I didn't owe them any more. Not my money, not my silence, not even my guilt. I'd barely been home for 15 minutes when someone started pounding on my door like they were trying to break it down. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I knew. Jacob. And standing behind him, arms folded like they were waiting for a reality show confessional, were our parents. I opened the door just wide enough to make a point that I wasn't afraid, but they weren't welcome either. Jacob gave me that smug look he always had in school, the one he used on teachers and ex-girlfriends when he wanted something without having to earn it. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Ethan?" he demanded. I said coolly, "I'm finally growing a spine." He scoffed and stepped forward, like he was going to push past me. I didn't move. Cut the theatrics. "You're really cutting off Mum and Dad over one trip?" "One trip? No, I'm cutting them off because they've been bleeding me dry while toasting champagne behind my back," Dad grunted. "You're acting disgraceful. And you're acting entitled," I shot back. "Funny how that works." Then came the kicker. Jacob smirked, like he'd been saving the worst for last. "You can't actually handle this on your own. You're not built like I am." I couldn't help it. I laughed, one of those hollow laughs that doesn't come from the gut, but somewhere colder. "You mean built like someone who's never earned $1 on his own?" "Sure, Jacob. Tell me more about your hard-knock life, sipping poolside martinis while Claire foots the bill." At that, Mom stepped in, her voice rising. "Don't bring Claire into this. She's been nothing but good to this family." "Yeah," I said. "She bought you a yacht vacation." "That's more than I ever got. And I sent you $50,000. "Enough," Dad barked. But then a new voice, cut in calm, sharp, and uninvited. Liam stepped into the hallway behind me. "If you're here to guilt Ethan back into servitude, it's not going to work." Mum's eyes narrowed. "This is family business. You don't belong in this conversation." Liam didn't flinch. "Family? You've treated Ethan like a walking ATM for over a year. You don't get to pull the family card now that the money's stopped." "You're just bitter," Jacob said, waving his hand like Liam was a mosquito. "You don't understand how this works." "Actually," Liam said, "I understand perfectly. You exploited him. And now that you've burned through your golden goose, you're scrambling." That was when Claire showed up at the end of the hallway. I didn't even know she was with them until she stepped forward, designer heels clicking on tile. Her eyes scanned the scene, unimpressed. "Jacob, I told you this was a bad idea." "Oh, now you have standards," I asked. Her expression tightened, but I wasn't done. "Let me guess. You thought you'd come intimidate the broke brother into coughing up more cash, make a scene, play the victim. How's that going?" Claire stepped forward. "You're not as righteous as you think, Ethan. You left your parents with nothing." "No," I said, stepping in front of Liam now. "They left me with nothing. Over and over again, I begged for respect. I begged to be treated like more than a bank account. And they laughed in my face while partying on a yacht." Jacob's face twisted with frustration. You're jealous. Admit it. You're right, I said, nodding. I was jealous that I was doing everything right and still being treated like a footnote, while you got praise for doing absolutely nothing. But now, I just pity you, I turned to Claire. And you, the woman with the money, the power, the image. You married a man who contributes nothing and blames everyone else when things go sideways. Congratulations, Claire scoffed, but for the first time, she looked like she'd taken a hit she didn't expect. Let's go, she snapped at Jacob. This is a waste of time. He hesitated, but when she turned, he followed. They disappeared down the hall like a storm retreating out to sea. I turned back to my parents. This is it, I said, quieter now. Don't call me. Don't text me. From this point forward, you'll have to figure things out without me. Ethan. Mum's voice cracked, and for a brief moment, I saw something like genuine fear flash in her eyes. You made your choices, I told her, and now I've made mine. Liam closed the door slowly. We stood there in the silence that followed, both of us listening for footsteps that didn't return. That, he said finally, was brutal. Yeah, I exhaled, but necessary. I didn't feel angry, not anymore. What I felt was weightless, like I'd been walking with concrete in my shoes for years and had finally kicked them off. You okay? He asked. Not yet, I admitted, but I'm getting there. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. I thought that after cutting them off, things would finally go quiet. They didn't. For a week, my phone buzzed like it had a personal vendetta. Calls, texts, voice messages, some begging, some passive-aggressive, some straight-up angry. I didn't respond to a single one. Liam watched me every time my screen lit up, ready to intercept. But I didn't need protection anymore, just distance. Then came the call that actually mattered. Ethan, it's Miss S. Thompson next door, she said one morning, her voice low, like she was gossiping over a fence. You might want to hear what happened last night. I blinked. I'm listening. Your parents had a full-blown shouting match with Jacob. Everyone on the street could hear it. What were they yelling about? You and money. Apparently, since you're cutting them off, they decided Jacob should start helping. But he refused, told them he wasn't their bank, slammed the door and left. Claire was with him. They packed up and drove off. I didn't know what to say at first. I had imagined them turning on each other, but to actually hear it happened, that was something else. Thank you, I said softly. You did the right thing, Ethan, she added before hanging up. We all saw how they leaned on you. I sat down slowly, the phone still in my hand. Jacob had bailed. The golden boy was out the door the second someone asked him to give instead of take. Liam walked in from the kitchen, carrying 2 mugs. Everything okay? They turned on Jacob, I said, taking the coffee. He left. No way! Yelled that he wasn't their bank, I added. Ironic. Liam sipped his drink. What now? I think, I said slowly, they finally get it. There's no one left to drain. We thought that was the end of it. We were wrong. A few days later, my father called. I don't know why I picked up maybe curiosity, maybe closure. Ethan, he said. His voice was slower, different. Like defeat had finally found him. It's about Jacob. I didn't say anything. He's back. Claire divorced him. Kicked him out. Took everything. He's staying here now. Doesn't have anywhere else to go. Wow, I replied flatly. Shame. He's not well, Dad continued. And your mum, she's worried sick. We all are. Why are you calling me? A beat of silence. Because you're still his brother. I closed my eyes. That word used to mean something to me. I stopped being his brother the day he stood on that yacht with a champagne flute, and laughed while I worked double shifts to keep you afloat. He was scared, Dad tried. He didn't know what else to do. No, I snapped. He just didn't want to. And now that his sugar glass life has shattered, I'm supposed to what? Forgive and rebuild. He has no one else, Dad said quietly. That's not true, I replied. He has you and Mum, the two people who always made sure he never had to struggle. Another pause. Then, softer, are you really going to turn your back on family? I smiled bitterly. I didn't turn my back, Dad. You pushed me out. And then I hung up. Liam didn't ask questions when I put the phone face down and walked outside to sit on the porch. He just followed and sat beside me, warm coffee in hand, saying nothing. That silence was better than 1,000 apologies I knew I'd never get. 3 years passed. I didn't see them. I didn't hear from them again after that call. Not until a letter showed up in my mailbox handwritten. No return address, but I knew the penmanship. Inside was one sentence, "We were wrong," and underneath, 2 signatures. My parents. I didn't reply. Not at first. I let it sit on my table for a week, 10 days, a month. Until one morning, something in me shifted. I drove back to that old house, the one where I'd cried, yelled, pleaded, and poured every last dollar just to be seen. The door opened slowly. My mum looked older, her shoulders slumped, her eyes wider than I'd ever seen them. Ethan. I didn't move. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. And to my own surprise, I didn't pull away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We're so sorry." Behind her, Dad stood silently. His hair had gone grey. His posture looked broken. "We failed you," he said quietly. "For a long time." I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't. But I said, "I know." We sat together in the living room, the one that used to be filled with noise and tension. Now it was just still. "Where's Jacob?" I asked eventually. "He left," Mum replied. "Got a job. Small apartment. Said he needed to figure things out on his own. We haven't heard from him in months." I nodded. A strange feeling stirred in my chest. Not joy, not pain, just closure. "I hope he does," I said. So did they. Back home, Liam looked up when I walked in. "How'd it go?" I took off my shoes and leaned against the wall. "It went," I said. They apologized. He raised his eyebrows. "You forgive them?" I thought about it. "I'm not sure if forgiveness is the right word," I said. "But I'm no longer angry." He smiled. "That's something." I looked around at our little place, the bookshelf we built together, the couch with the slightly sunken side, the half-dead plant I still hadn't replaced. It felt like home. For the first time in years, I did too. Story 2. I never thought a seating chart could wreck me, but there it was, my name, buried at the bottom corner of the list, like an afterthought. Dad's wedding to his new wife, Karen, was supposed to be a celebration. A blended family, new beginnings, all that. But when I walked into the venue and found myself assigned to table 17, tucked between relatives I barely knew and hadn't seen since I was 10, I realized something I had been trying not to admit for a long time. I wasn't family anymore. Not really. Meanwhile, up at the front prime real estate near the dance floor and stage were Dad, Karen, my stepbrother Ryan, his wife, and a bunch of Dad's colleagues from his investment firm. Ryan, of course, had a front row seat, literal and figurative. His name was engraved on everything these days: holiday cards, family newsletters, even the proud dad conversations I overheard at every reunion. When Karen breezed by me, glass of Merlot in hand, she didn't even seem awkward about it. "We had to prioritize, Savannah," she said, smiling like I wasn't blinking through her words. Hope you understand. Understand? Oh, I did. I waited for Dad to say something, anything, to realize how this looked. But he just kept talking to someone across the room, didn't even glance in my direction. That was the moment. Not Karen's smug tone, not even the seating chart. It was that glance, empty, distracted, indifferent. That was when I knew I wasn't wanted here. I was tolerated. So I smoothed the skirt of my dress, swallowed the lump in my throat, and said quietly, "Thanks for making this easy." Then I walked out. No yelling, no scene. Just the sound of my heels clicking against the pavement as I made my way to the car. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding back tears. I was relieved. The question I had been asking myself for years, was I overreacting, finally had an answer. I wasn't. They'd shown me exactly where I stood, and I finally believed them. I sat in my car for a few minutes, half expecting a message. Maybe Dad realizing I was gone. Maybe an aunt wondering where I went. Nothing. They were still inside, drinking, dancing, laughing. And I was in the parking lot, forgotten. And that's when I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. I started the engine and drove away. With every passing mile, I felt lighter. Growing up, I was the overachiever. Straight A's, advanced classes, student council. Dad used to brag about me back when I fit the mold. He always assumed I'd go into law or finance, something serious, but I chose nursing. I wanted to work with people, make a difference, help in a real, physical way. Dad didn't yell, didn't argue. He just sighed. "You'll work long hours for not much money," he'd said. "You'll burn out. You're better than this." I told him it's what I wanted, that I didn't care about the money. "You can help people as a doctor," he said. "Why settle for the bottom rung?" That was how he saw it, like I'd settled. Like I'd failed to live up to what I could have been. He stopped asking about school. Never asked how training was going. When I landed my first job at the hospital, he didn't even mention it. But when Ryan launched a startup, Dad was the first to invest. He couldn't stop talking about how smart he was, how driven. Ryan was building something. I was just working. When Ryan needed a loan, Dad wired him the money. When I asked for help covering a medical conference, I got a lecture about financial independence. So I figured things out on my own, picked up extra shifts, lived with roommates, paid my way through everything. And still, every time my job came up, Dad had a comment, "Night shifts again." "Well, you chose that path. Still renting? You should have planned better." But when his blood pressure spiked, who was the one checking it? When he had his surgery, who managed his post-op meds? Me. And every time I tried to help, he'd say, "It's not like you're a real doctor." The irony didn't even register with him. I should have walked away then. I didn't, because I still thought, he's my dad. That has to mean something. When I got home after the wedding, I waited. A text, a call, anything. It never came. I ate takeout, scrolled on my phone, and for once felt nothing. No guilt, no confusion, just peace. The next morning, I got a message from Aunt Michelle. "Hey, sweetie, are you okay?" I ignored it. Later, a cousin. "Saw you leave early. Everything okay?" Also ignored. Then came the one from Dad, "We need to talk." No apology, no concern, just a demand. I left it on red. I expected the guilt to creep in. It didn't. Instead, I kept living. I volunteered for more shifts. Met up with friends. Enjoyed my life without constantly replaying every conversation in my head. Then, a week later, another call. This time from Aunt Michelle. "You need to talk to your dad," she said. I didn't reply, just waited. He's in the hospital, she added. He's fine now, but he needs help. There it was. Not, he's sorry, he misses you, just he needs help. Turns out, he'd ignored his blood pressure issues for too long, mismanaged his meds. Usual story. Before, I would have been the one spotting the signs, calling his doctor, making sure he was okay. But I wasn't there. And now it mattered. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore, Karen called. I didn't pick up, Ryan called. Same. Finally, Aunt Michelle tried again. Look, I get why you're upset. Do you? I asked. She paused. You know how your father is. He doesn't mean things the way they come out. Really? I said. Then explain it. What did he mean? Silence, because we both knew the truth. He did mean it. Every slight, every dismissal, every moment he made me feel like I didn't matter. Now he wanted me back, not as a daughter, but as a nurse. Another text came that night. I need to talk to you. Still no apology, just a need. I turned off my phone. 1 week later, he was discharged. Problem was, he couldn't care for himself. And full-time care, that's expensive. Before, I did it all for free. Managed his meds, checked in, set appointments. Now, he'd have to pay someone. Karen called again. We should move past all this, I snorted. Oh, now we're family again? She didn't respond. So which is it? I asked. Am I family, or just someone you ignore until you need something? She hung up, and that was the last I heard for a while. A few quiet months passed after that last call from Karen. I went back to my routine working, eating dinner in peace, sleeping well. I was calmer than I'd been in years. And just when I started to believe they'd finally moved on, she showed up. It was a Tuesday. Slow day at the clinic. I was catching up on charting when the receptionist popped her head in. Hey, there's a woman up front asking for you. Says she's your stepmother. I didn't even have to ask her name. I stood up, took a breath, and walked out. Karen was already mid-charm offensive, smiling like she hadn't completely erased me from my own father's wedding. Savannah, she beamed, like we were catching up for brunch. I crossed my arms. You're not supposed to show up here. This is my job. I just wanted to talk, she said, voice dripping with fake concern. It's about your father, I shook my head. No, you don't get to bring him up, like that's going to change anything. She blinked, like she didn't expect pushback. He's not doing well, I know. That's what happens when you ignore your health and push away the only person who cared. He's getting worse, she said. We can't afford full-time care anymore. I raised an eyebrow. Should have prioritized better. Her expression twitched, just for a second. This isn't the time for grudges, Savannah. He's your father. That word used to land like a weight. Now, it just hung there, meaningless. If he needs care, hire someone, I said. Ryan's doing great, right? Let him cover it. Her eyes flickered. He's busy. Of course he is. I turned to leave. She grabbed my wrist. You owe him. I looked her dead in the eye. No, I don't. Then I walked back to my office and shut the door behind me. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Shouldn't have. Hey, the voice said, low and familiar. I froze. Dad? A long pause. Karen said she saw you. She did. Another silence. Then I think we should talk. In person. I looked at the clock. You know, I said. A year ago, I'd have dropped everything to hear you say that. He didn't say anything. But let's not pretend this is about bonding. More silence. Then finally, come by. Just dinner. No one else. Please. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The house hadn't changed, but it felt different. Smaller, colder. Dad was already at the table when I walked in. Takeout containers sat between us. He hadn't even tried to cook. We ate mostly in silence. Halfway through, he cleared his throat. "So, how's work?" I stared at him. "You don't care about my job, Dad." He winced. "That's not true. Really. Last I checked, it was a waste of my potential. I didn't mean it that way." "Then how did you mean it?" He didn't answer. "Just say what you came to say." He finally sighed. "I need help." There it was. "You mean you need a nurse?" I said, putting down my fork. "I wouldn't put it like that." "How would you put it?" "I just thought maybe since you know this stuff." I stared at him. "Since I know this stuff, maybe I could save you money." He shifted. "It's not like that." "No? Then why are you making this my problem now? You had a daughter who bent over backward for you, and you treated her like a footnote. That's not fair." "It's not?" I motioned to the kitchen. "Where was this concern when Karen stuck me at a table with strangers? When you let her do it without blinking, he didn't say a word. You don't want a daughter, Dad. You want a caregiver who won't send you a bill." He looked down. That was the last time I saw him. He texted a few times after that. I ignored them. Eventually, they stopped. A few months passed, and I heard through a cousin he'd hired someone, a professional, one who didn't work for free. I guess Ryan didn't pitch in. Karen complained about the cost, but didn't offer to take care of him herself. Me? I was doing great. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to chase approval or prove my worth to someone who'd already made up his mind. About a year later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Your dad's back in the hospital. Thought you should know." I stared at it for a long time. No details, no emotion. Just a vague update from someone who assumed I'd care. I blocked the number. I didn't ask if he was okay. I didn't call anyone. And for once, I didn't feel guilty. Time passed, quietly, peacefully. I travelled, made new friends, took extra certifications. I even started saving for a house of my own. No roommates, no shared walls, just something that was mine, built on my terms. Every now and then, someone in the family would try to pull me back in. "Your dad's not doing well. Karen's overwhelmed. Ryan's too busy." But none of them ever said, "He's sorry," because he wasn't. And I wasn't stupid enough to believe he ever would be. One afternoon, I was waiting in line at my favourite cafe when someone tapped my shoulder. "Savannah?" I turned around. Ryan, same smug face, same expensive clothes. Probably just finished closing a deal about disrupting something no one asked to be disrupted. "Well, look who it is," he grinned. I gave him a nod. "Ryan." He glanced at my scrubs. "Still doing the whole nurse thing, huh?" I smiled thinly. "Still avoiding Dad's calls?" That wiped the smile right off his face. "What do you want me to do?" he said eventually. He made his choices. "You're right. He did. He gave you everything. And you didn't help either." I tilted my head. "Yeah, because he treated me like a ghost." "What's your excuse?" He didn't have one. 6 months later, I got another update this time from Liam, a cousin I actually liked. "He's in a nursing facility now," he said. "One of the bad ones, the cheap kind. Ethan's really not helping?" I asked. "Nope, doesn't even visit." I nodded. That tracked. I thought about going, just to see if he'd changed. Maybe he'd say something real this time. But deep down, I knew exactly how it would go. He'd look at me like nothing had happened. He'd say he needed me. He'd expect me to clean up the mess like I always had. And I'd be right back where I started. So I didn't go. I never planned to. It had been over a year since I last spoke to him, maybe more. I stopped keeping track. Every now and then, Liam would text me with little updates. Things like, he sold the house, or Karen's trying to move him somewhere cheaper. I'd read them, nod to myself, and go back to what I was doing. Not out of spite, but because I'd finally accepted the truth. My absence didn't break them. It just revealed what was already broken, and it wasn't mine to fix. Then one evening, while I was eating dinner on the couch after a long shift, the news came on. Some business segment about rising tech startups. And there he was, Ryan, polished, confident, sitting in a high-rise office with a view of the skyline behind him, talking about his company's expansion, investment rounds, revenue growth. I just stared at the screen, fork frozen halfway to my mouth. He looked every bit the success story Dad used to dream about. And yet, this man, with his designer watch and million-dollar smile, couldn't spare a dime to help the father who gave him everything. That's when it hit me. Dad made his choice. He built his future on favoritism and ego. He didn't invest in people who showed up, only in people who made him look good. And now, when he needed someone, all he had was silence. Meanwhile, I had something else entirely. I had peace. I didn't think about him much after that. Life had a rhythm. I had my work, my friends, my own space. I even started mentoring a couple of nursing students. It felt good to be the kind of person I wished I'd had when I was younger. Then, out of nowhere, Liam texted again. "Your dad passed last night. Thought you should know." I sat still for a long time reading those words. No tears, no big reaction, just quiet. Because that's what it had been for a long time, quiet. I typed back, "Thanks for letting me know." That was it. I didn't ask about the funeral. I didn't ask who was with him. I didn't ask if he said anything before the end, because I already knew the answers wouldn't change anything. Some people might call that cold. But here's the thing, they weren't there for the missed birthdays. The way he'd light up when Ryan walked in, only to barely nod in my direction. They didn't hear the way he talked about my career, like it was a hobby. They didn't sit at the cousin table in a dress they saved up to buy, only to be told we had to prioritize. So, no, I wasn't going to pretend we had something we didn't. And I wasn't going to pretend that his death suddenly rewrote history. A few weeks later, Karen sent a message. Just a short email, buried in pleasantries. "If you'd like anything from the house before we clear it out, let me know." I closed it without replying. There wasn't a single thing in that house I wanted. Nothing that felt like mine. Nothing that carried love. Let Ryan take it all. The pictures, the watch collection, the books Dad never read but displayed to impress guests. Let Karen keep her memories. I didn't need any of it. Everything I had worth holding on to, I'd already built on my own. Funny how people assume that family is supposed to mean something just because it exists. Like DNA comes with a built-in guarantee of loyalty, kindness, respect. But what I've learned is this real family shows up when it's inconvenient. Real family remembers you not just when you're useful, but when you're quiet and hurting and unseen. And that was never Dad. So I let it go. 1 year later, I was standing in the break room, sipping coffee, when one of my co-workers started talking about their dad. How he still calls every weekend. How he insists on checking their oil when they visit. How he sends articles about best sleep positions like it's vital intel. And I smiled. Not because I missed it, but because I understood the kind of love they were talking about. The kind I gave for years, hoping I'd get some of it back. The kind that should have come without conditions. Now, I have that kind of love, but it comes from people who chose me. My friends, my co-workers, the patients who remember my name months after they leave the hospital. The little girl who drew me a picture after I helped her breathe easier. That's the thing they never understood. Value isn't about power or titles or being at the head table. Sometimes it's just being present, quietly, consistently. And I was never going to get that from the people who only remembered me when it cost them something not to. So, no, I don't regret walking out of that wedding. I don't regret the silence that followed. And I don't regret choosing myself when no one else would, because in the end, I didn't lose anything. I let go of people who never truly held me. And in return, I got a life that feels mine. Really, fully mine. Final note, if you're reading this wondering whether it's okay to walk away from people who treat you like an afterthought, yeah, it's okay. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave, because some people won't change and they won't see your worth until it's no longer theirs to witness. And by then, it's already too late. Story 3. You ever have one of those moments where time just stops? Like the world keeps spinning, but you're frozen, stuck watching everything crash in slow motion. That was me, sitting in our kitchen, still half hyped about moving into college next week. One minute I was talking to my dad about how much duct tape we'd need for the move, and the next bam, he nuked my future with a casual, "Oh, by the way, I dipped into your college savings for the business." Just like that, like he was telling me the weather. At first I thought I misheard. Wait, what? He sipped his coffee, unfazed. "Relax, it's not like it's gone. I just needed to jumpstart this new venture. I'll pay it back." It felt like someone punched me in the gut and twisted. My hands curled around the edge of the table, knuckles turning white. "You borrowed it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "How much?" He actually chuckled. "All of it. All of it." I swear my ears started ringing. The same fund I'd scraped together since I was 12 gone. Every dog walking gig, lawn mowed, birthday check saved, vanished, without so much as a heads up. The fund he told me to build, the one we talked about over late-night dinners and during long drives to campus tours, that dream evaporated. And he had the nerve to wave me off. "Don't be dramatic." Dramatic? How am I supposed to pay for school now? "Student loans," he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like I hadn't worked my arse off to avoid exactly that. I whispered, "You promised the money was safe." And he laughed. "You'll figure it out, Levi." It's not the end of the world, but it was my world. I left the house in a daze, not even sure how I ended up in my car. Just one thought looping in my head, he never planned to tell me. He'd sat beside me through every acceptance letter, smiled when I got into my top choice, helped me budget for books knowing full well the money wasn't there. And he said nothing. By the time I got back home that night, I had a choice: pretend like nothing happened or accept the truth that the man I idolized had stolen from me. Because that's what it was, theft. And it wasn't the first time. Growing up, my dad was the dreamer, the guy who always had $1 million idea cooking. My mum? She was the realist, the one making sure rent got paid and the lights stayed on. But Dad? He talked big, told stories about how we'd be rich any day now. When I was 13, he asked me for $20, said he needed gas money. I remember hesitating, not because I didn't trust him, but because it felt weird. Shouldn't he be the one giving me money? "Don't worry," he said, flashing his signature grin. "I'll pay you back this weekend." He didn't. And when I asked, he laughed it off. "Come on, Levi, don't be tight about $20. It kept happening. 50 here, 100 there, always with a story, always with a promise. And when I pushed back, I was the bad guy. I raised you better than this. Eventually, I stopped asking. I just let it go. But the college fund, that was supposed to be untouchable, sacred. He's the one who taught me to save. Every dollar you make, Stash it away for college, he'd say. Don't make the mistakes I did. And I listened. God, I listened. Even when he missed rent, even when the power got shut off, I kept saving. Because college was my ticket out. I was going to break the cycle. Then he took it all. Because of course he did. When I was 16, I overheard my parents fighting. My mum's voice was sharp. You're gambling with our future. It's not gambling, he snapped. It's investing. They thought I didn't hear, but I did. That was the first time I felt real doubt. Like maybe he wasn't just unlucky. Maybe he was reckless. But I still didn't think he'd touch the fund. Not the one thing that actually mattered. When I was accepted into West Ridge University, he cried. Told me how proud he was. Told me everything was taken care of. He lied straight to my face. And what killed me most wasn't just that he took the money. It was that he felt nothing about it. The day after he dropped the bomb, I sat on the couch scrolling through student loan calculators, my stomach doing flips. Every number was worse than the last. Tuition, housing, meals, forget about it. Even if I got approved, which wasn't likely on such short notice, I'd be buried in debt by graduation. And forget working part-time, I'd need 2 jobs just to keep my head above water. The whole point of that fund was so I wouldn't end up like him, broke, desperate, clinging to doomed business ideas. I called the school, told them what happened. They were sympathetic, but unless you can show proof of funds, we can't secure your enrollment. That was it. Done. No refund, no deferment, just gone. I told my mum. Thought maybe she'd fight for me. Maybe she didn't know. She knew, and she didn't stop him. Her face said it all, eyes heavy, shoulders sagging under the weight of years spent covering his mistakes. She just whispered, I'm sorry, Levi. Your father thought this would work. You think that makes it better? That night I confronted him. I was shaking. You need to fix this. He didn't even look up from the TV. I already told you. No, you stole from me. You need to fix this, he sighed. I can't just pull money out of thin air, then sell your car, sell your watch, get a second job. I need the car for business. That was the moment I knew he never planned to fix this. He didn't even think he'd done anything wrong. So I did the only thing I could. I got a job, not some cute college gig. No, I was bussing tables full-time at a diner across town while my friends packed for orientation and shared dorm selfies online. And he kept scrolling, kept pitching business ideas, kept offering me life advice. I came home every night smelling like grease and old coffee, and he still thought he had the right to tell me to think big. 3 months later, his big idea collapsed. Bills piled up, collectors started calling, and then one day he turned to me, Levi, the first need your help. When he asked for help, I didn't answer right away, just stared at him, letting the silence hang. He didn't even look embarrassed. He looked entitled, like it was obvious I'd bail him out. Like that's what kids do when their parents screw up. I'm not asking for much, he said. Just a small loan. Just enough to keep things afloat while I pivot. While he pivoted, he made it sound like he was trying to land a spaceship, not begging for money from the same kid he'd robbed blind. I let out a breath and said, You already took everything from me. Figure it out yourself. He blinked, confused, like he couldn't quite believe I meant it. I guess in his mind, I was still that same kid who handed over gas money with a smile and never asked for it back. But that version of me, he didn't exist anymore. And I walked away. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that he learned a lesson, got a real job, apologized. But no, that man didn't change. He just switched tactics. The next morning, my mum cornered me at the kitchen table. Her eyes were puffy, and she looked like she hadn't slept. I already knew what was coming. He's your father, she said softly. That's all you've got? I asked. She winced. He's lost everything. He needs support. I shook my head. Not my problem. Her shoulders dropped like I'd just kicked a puppy. You don't mean that. I do. And you should too. She didn't answer, just stared down at her coffee, like maybe the answer would appear in the steam. She didn't get it. Or maybe she did and just didn't want to admit it. But I was done making myself small so he could feel big. That week, my dad started making the rounds, calling uncles, cousins, old friends, telling his side of the story, of course, painting me as cold, selfish, ungrateful. He's letting me drown, he told my Aunt Marcy. I did everything for that kid, and now he won't even pick up the phone. Cue the flood of texts from relatives. He's your dad. Don't let money come between you. You'll regret this one day. It took everything in me not to scream. These people had no idea what he'd done. No clue how deep the betrayal ran. And if I tried to explain, I'd look like the petty one, airing out family business like dirty laundry. But something shifted over the next couple weeks. My cousin Nate found out the truth, called me after my dad hit him up for $5,000. Dude, he said, he told me you were helping him already. Said you co-signed a loan. Nope, I said. I told him to figure it out. Nate was quiet for a second. Yeah, that tracks. He's been shady lately. One by one, the calls slowed. The texts stopped. Turns out, once people realized what kind of guy he really was, they stopped taking his calls altogether. And for the first time, he had no one left to lean on. Then came the last desperate call. It was late. My phone buzzed around midnight. I stared at the screen, Dad. I almost didn't answer. Should have let it ring. But some part of me still hoped, even then, that maybe he'd say what I needed to hear. Hey, kid, he said. His voice was low, not angry, not arrogant, just small. I waited. I messed up, he added. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Yeah, you did. He paused like that was supposed to fix something. Then came the real reason for the call. I need help. And there it was. Not I miss you. Not I want to make things right. Just another ask. Another hand reaching out. I closed my eyes, swallowed everything I'd carried for months, the betrayal, the humiliation, the way he never once said sorry. Then I let it go. I can't help you. There was a long silence on the other end, then a quiet chuckle, bitter, not amused. Yeah, he said. Figured. Click. And just like that, I deleted the number. I don't know exactly what happened after that. I heard rumours that he lost the house, that he sold his car, that he was couch surfing between friends until even they gave up on him. At some point he tried launching another business. Of course he did. It failed. Then he vanished. No more calls, no more updates, nothing. And you know what? I didn't care. There's this thing people say about how cutting off family is something you'll regret. That one day you'll wake up and wish you'd forgiven, reached out, made peace. That day hasn't come. Not once. Because now I understand something I didn't before. Some people will take and take until there's nothing left. Not your money, not your trust you. And sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away. I wasn't a bad son. I was a tired one. And I don't regret a damn thing. After that final call, things got quiet. Not just around me, but inside me too. It's weird, the way silence can feel like peace after so much noise. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology or a fix that was never going to come. I was just done. And in that space, I started figuring out what my life looked like without him in it. The diner job sucked. The hours were long. the pay was trash, and I had blisters on my feet more often than not. But it was mine. I showed up, I worked, and I went home knowing no one could take it from me. Not this time. I saved every spare dollar, cut corners, lived cheap. My dream school, that was off the table. But community college? That I could manage. I took night classes while working mornings, running on black coffee and stubbornness. Slowly, I rebuilt. Not just my plans, but my sense of self. My future didn't look the way I pictured it at 17, but it was mine. And I wasn't letting anyone else steer the wheel ever again. There were still moments it hit me sideways. Like when I'd pass a college bookstore and see students buying their overpriced textbooks, or when I'd hear someone casually talk about dad helping them move in. I'd get this cold tightness in my chest, this mix of grief and resentment, not just for what I lost, but for the version of my dad I had to let go of. Because the man I thought he was, he only ever existed in my head. One day, a buddy at work was talking about his own dad. How the guy came back into his life after years and wanted to reconnect. He asked me if I'd ever considered doing that. I told him the truth. I don't hate him, I said, but I don't owe him anything. And that was it. Not some big dramatic answer, just a quiet knowing. People still don't always get it. Family, especially older relatives, they act like there's this unspoken rule that no matter what your parents do, you're supposed to forgive, forget, and welcome them back with open arms. But forgiveness without accountability, that's just permission. I didn't walk away because I was bitter. I walked away because I was finally tired of being hurt. A year later, I got a message from my cousin. Apparently, my dad had tried to open a business again, some rental property thing with zero capital and a bunch of bad paperwork. It flopped hard. Last anyone heard, he was staying in a basement apartment across town. No car, no business, no savings. And still, somehow, no apology. Not that I needed it anymore. My mum and I have a better relationship now. We don't talk about him much, mostly because it's still hard. But I've started to understand her more. What it must have been like, living with someone like that for so long. Always hoping, always covering. One day she said, I should have stopped him. I just didn't know how. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Some things don't need a reply. The funny thing is, the pain doesn't really live in the big moments, the betrayal, the money, the dropout. It's in the quiet stuff. The way I double-check my bank account 3 times before trusting it's safe. The way I still don't feel comfortable asking for help. The way I flinch a little when someone says, trust me. But I'm working on that too. I've come a long way. Transferred to a state school with a scholarship. Saved up enough to cover my own rent. Found a few friends who feel more like family than some of my blood ever did. Started dreaming again, but differently this time. Not based on promises, just plans, real ones. People ask me if I ever think about reaching out to him. I don't. I think about who I've become because of what happened. Not in spite of it, not because it was some beautiful lesson in disguise, but because I survived it. I adapted. I grew up fast, too fast maybe. But I made it. I don't need closure from him. I am the closure. So no, I don't regret walking away. Not then, not now, because at the end of the day, some people will always choose themselves, no matter who they hurt along the way. And the smartest thing I ever did was finally choosing me instead.